They scoffed at her request for a rifle. Then the commander quietly said, "Give her the black Talon." The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training grounds as Sarah Chen stepped off the transport vehicle. Her boots hit the dusty earth with determination, but she could feel the eyes of every soldier watching her arrival. At 23, she was the only woman in the specialized reconnaissance unit, and whispers followed her like smoke. "Look what they sent us," muttered Sergeant Rodriguez to his buddy near the equipment shed. "Probably can't even carry her own pack." Sarah pretended not to hear the comment, but her jaw tightened. She had fought tooth and nail to get here, scoring higher than most of the men on every test except the physical requirements. Even then, she had met the standards, though barely. The military had recently opened these elite units to women, and she was among the first wave of volunteers. Commander Harrison emerged from the tactical building, his weathered face showing no emotion as he surveyed the new arrivals. He was a legend in special operations, with over 2 decades of experience in the most dangerous missions around the world. His reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning. "Listen up." Harrison's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "You're here because someone thinks you have what it takes to be part of Falcon Unit. I don't care about your previous scores, your recommendations, or where you came from. Here you prove yourself every single day." Sarah stood at attention with the other recruits, but she noticed how some of the veteran soldiers exchanged glances when Harrison's eyes lingered on her, for a moment longer than the others. She had expected this skepticism, but experiencing it firsthand felt like carrying extra weight on her shoulders. The first week was brutal. Physical training began before dawn and continued until well past sunset. Sarah pushed herself harder than she ever had, knowing that any sign of weakness would confirm what many already believed about women in combat roles. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, and her hands bled from rope climbing exercises, but she never complained. During weapons training, she excelled with standard rifles and pistols. Her accuracy scores were consistently in the top 3 among all recruits, but she noticed the instructors always seemed to have something critical to say about her technique. While praising men who shot worse, "Chen, your stance is too narrow," barked Instructor Williams during rifle practice. "You need more stability." Sarah adjusted her position, though she knew her stance was textbook perfect. She had studied every manual, watched countless training videos, and practiced until the movements were second nature. Still, she made the adjustment without argument. The other recruits began to notice her skill, even if the instructors seemed reluctant to acknowledge it. Private Jackson, a young man from Texas who had initially been among her harshest critics, started seeking her advice about breathing techniques for long-range shots. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked one evening as they cleaned their weapons. "My grandfather," Sarah replied, carefully running a cloth through her rifle barrel.
"He was a Marine sniper in Vietnam.
"Started teaching me when I was 8 years old." This revelation surprised several nearby soldiers who had assumed she was just another diversity recruit with minimal experience. Her grandfather had been more than a teacher. He had been her hero, filling her childhood with stories of precision, patience, and the honor of serving one's country. As the weeks progressed, Sarah began to earn grudging respect from some of her fellow trainees. She never asked for help carrying heavy equipment, never complained about the harsh conditions, and never used her gender as an excuse for anything. When others struggled with night navigation exercises, she quietly helped them find their way without making them feel inferior. But the real test was coming. Commander Harrison had mentioned advanced weapons training, and rumors circulated about an upcoming exercise that would determine who stayed and who was sent back to regular units. Sarah knew this would be her moment to prove that she belonged here, not as a token female soldier, but as a warrior capable of standing alongside the best. The night before the advanced training began, she lay in her bunk thinking about her grandfather's words. "Sweetheart, the rifle doesn't care if you're a man or woman. It only responds to skill, respect, and determination. Show them what you're made of." She closed her eyes, knowing that tomorrow would change everything. The skeptics were waiting for her to fail, but she had no intention of giving them that satisfaction. The Black Talon rifle system, the military's most advanced sniper platform, awaited those who proved themselves worthy. Sarah had dreamed of earning the right to wield such a weapon, and now that opportunity was finally within reach. The advanced weapons training facility was unlike anything Sarah had seen before. The building was restricted access only, with multiple security checkpoints and guards who scrutinized every person entering. Inside, walls lined with the most sophisticated firearms in the military arsenal created an atmosphere of reverence and intimidation. Commander Harrison stood before the remaining 12 recruits, having already dismissed 6 others who couldn't meet the initial standards. His expression was stone cold as he gestured toward a locked cabinet containing rifles that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Today you'll be introduced to weapon systems that most soldiers never even see, Harrison announced. These are not toys. They represent millions of dollars in research and development, and they require operators with exceptional skill and judgment. Sarah felt her heart racing as the commander walked past various weapon displays, explaining the capabilities of each system. When he stopped in front of a particular case, every recruit leaned forward with curiosity. Inside was a rifle unlike any other, its sleek black frame seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. "This is the Black Talon system," Harrison said, his voice carrying unusual weight. "It's equipped with smart optics, environmental compensation, and ballistic computing that can calculate shot placement in real time. Only 3 soldiers in this entire base have been certified to use it." The recruit stared in awe at the weapon. Sarah had read rumors about such advanced systems in military journals, but seeing one in person was breathtaking. The rifle represented the pinnacle of sniper technology, capable of making shots that would be impossible with conventional weapons. "The qualification process is extremely selective," Harrison continued. "You'll undergo 3 days of testing with progressively difficult challenges. Most of you will not make it past the first day." Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the veteran instructors, approached the group with a clipboard. "We'll start with standard precision shooting at various ranges, then move to environmental challenges including wind, rain, and low visibility conditions. Finally, tactical scenarios that simulate real combat situations." As the recruits moved to the shooting range, Sarah overheard several conversations that made her stomach knot with anger and determination. "Waste of time testing the girl on advanced systems," muttered one instructor to another. "She'll wash out before lunch." "Should have never let women into these programs," agreed his colleague. "It's just political correctness gone too far." Sarah bit her tongue and focused on preparing her assigned rifle. She had used this particular model before, but never under such scrutinizing conditions. Every movement she made was being watched and evaluated by instructors who seemed eager to find fault. The first challenge was precision shooting at distances ranging from 300 to 1,000 meters. Sarah approached the firing line with calm confidence, drawing on years of training with her grandfather. She controlled her breathing, felt the wind patterns on her skin, and squeezed the trigger with mechanical precision. Her first shot hit dead center at 300 meters. The second shot at 500 meters was equally perfect. By the time she reached the 1,000-meter target, a small crowd of instructors had gathered behind her position. Watching in silence, the shot cracked across the range, and everyone waited for the spotter's call. "Dead center, perfect score," came the announcement over the radio. Private Jackson, shooting at the station next to her, shook his head in amazement. "I've never seen anything like that," he whispered. "It's like she's part machine." But Sarah noticed that while her scores were being recorded, the instructors' expressions remained skeptical. She realized that no matter how well she performed, some of them would never see her as capable of handling the most advanced weapon systems. During the environmental challenges, conditions became increasingly difficult. Rain poured down on the range while fans created crosswinds that constantly changed direction. The targets were smaller and positioned at awkward angles that required complex calculations. Many of the male recruits struggled with these conditions, their shots scattered across the target faces or missing entirely. Sarah adjusted her technique for each environmental factor, remembering her grandfather's lessons about patience and adaptation. "The rifle is just a tool," he had always told her. "The real weapon is your mind." She continued to score in the top percentiles, but noticed how the instructors would find minor technical violations in her form or procedure, things they seemed to overlook when evaluating the male recruits. It became clear that she was being held to a different, higher standard. As the first day concluded, only 8 recruits remained qualified to continue. Sarah was among them, but she could feel the resentment building among some of the instructors. They had expected her to fail, and her success was disrupting their preconceived notions about women in combat roles. That evening, as she cleaned her rifle and prepared for the next day's challenges, Sarah overheard a heated discussion among the senior staff. Through the thin walls of the equipment room, she could make out fragments of conversation that chilled her to the bone. "This has gone far enough," one voice argued. "We can't have a woman qualify for the Black Talon system. What kind of message does that send?" "Her scores are undeniable," replied another voice she recognized as Sergeant Rodriguez. "Like it or not, she's earning her place here." The conversation continued, but Sarah had heard enough. She realized that her biggest challenge wouldn't be the technical requirements of advanced weapon systems, but overcoming the institutional bias that saw her presence as a threat rather than an asset. The second day of testing brought tactical scenarios designed to simulate real combat conditions. The remaining recruits were divided into pairs and given missions that required both technical shooting skills and strategic thinking. Sarah was paired with Martinez, a seasoned corporal who had initially been skeptical of her abilities but was beginning to show grudging respect. "Look, Chen," Martinez said as they reviewed their mission briefing, "these scenarios are designed to wash people out. The instructors will throw curveballs at us that aren't in any manual. Their first assignment was a hostage rescue simulation, where they had to neutralize multiple targets while avoiding civilian casualties. The scenario took place in a mock urban environment with buildings, alleys, and rooftops that provided both cover and shooting positions. Sarah studied the layout carefully, noting sight lines and potential complications. Her grandfather had always emphasized the importance of understanding the battlefield before taking any action. She could almost hear his voice. "Speed is important, sweetheart, but accuracy under pressure is what separates professionals from amateurs." As they moved through the course, Sarah demonstrated skills that surprised even herself. She identified threats that Martinez missed, calculated shot angles that seemed impossible, and maintained perfect accuracy while moving between positions. Her performance was flawless, but she noticed how the evaluating instructors focused on minor procedural issues rather than her exceptional marksmanship. "Recruit Chen," called out Instructor Williams, "your movement pattern deviated from standard protocol by approximately 2 degrees. Sarah knew this criticism was petty and unreasonable. Her deviation had been tactically sound, allowing her to avoid exposure while maintaining a clear shot at the target. But she simply acknowledged the feedback without argument, understanding that defending herself would only provide more ammunition for her critics. During the lunch break, she overheard a conversation between 2 senior instructors that made her blood boil. "We need to find a way to disqualify her," one whispered urgently. "The brass is watching this program closely, and if a woman qualifies for Black Talon, it'll open floodgates we can't control." "Her scores are too good," replied the other. "We've tried everything, but she keeps performing above standards." Sarah realized that some of the staff were actively working against her, looking for any excuse to remove her from the program. This revelation was both infuriating and motivating. She had come too far to let prejudice derail her dreams. The afternoon brought the most challenging scenario yet, a long-range precision shot that had to be taken while under simulated enemy fire. The recruits were positioned on a platform that shook and vibrated to simulate artillery bombardment, while loudspeakers blasted the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Martinez went first, struggling to maintain accuracy as the platform bucked beneath him. His shot was close but missed the center ring by several inches. The other recruits faced similar difficulties, with only 2 managing to hit the target at all under such chaotic conditions. When Sarah's turn arrived, she closed her eyes for a moment and centered herself. The chaos around her faded into background noise as she focused on the fundamentals her grandfather had drilled into her countless times. She felt the rhythm of the platform's movement, timed her breathing to match the mechanical vibrations, and squeezed the trigger during a brief moment of relative stability. The shot rang out, and silence fell over the entire training area. Everyone waited for the spotter's report, which seemed to take an eternity. "Perfect center shot," came the announcement. Textbook execution under extreme conditions. Even the instructors who had been criticizing her all day stood in stunned silence. Several recruits shook their heads in disbelief while Martinez clapped her on the shoulder with genuine admiration. "That was impossible," he whispered. "I've never seen anyone make that shot under those conditions." But Sarah's moment of triumph was short-lived. As the day's evaluations concluded, Instructor Williams approached her with a stern expression. "Recruit Chen, there's been a question raised about your performance today," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Some concerns about whether you're receiving unauthorized assistance or using unregulated techniques. The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. After demonstrating superior skills repeatedly, they were now suggesting she was somehow cheating. The implication was both insulting and potentially career-ending if it went into her official record. "Sir, I can assure you that my performance is based entirely on training and preparation," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We'll be conducting a formal review," Williams continued. "Until then, your advancement to the final day of testing is under suspension." Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. After everything she had accomplished, they were going to prevent her from even attempting to qualify for the Black Talon system, based on unfounded suspicions. The other recruits looked away uncomfortably, recognizing the injustice but unwilling to speak up. As she walked back to her quarters that evening, Sarah felt a mixture of rage and despair that threatened to overwhelm her. She had played by their rules, exceeded their standards, and proven herself capable of anything they demanded. Yet they were still looking for ways to exclude her from opportunities that should have been earned through merit alone. That night, she called her grandfather from the base phone, needing to hear his voice and wisdom. "They're trying to stop me, Grandpa," she said, fighting back tears. "No matter how well I perform, they find reasons to question my abilities." "Listen to me, sweetheart." His weathered voice came through the phone with absolute certainty. "There will always be people who try to limit what you can achieve. But remember this, your rifle doesn't know your gender and neither does the target. When the moment comes to prove yourself, let your skills do all the talking." Sarah spent a sleepless night preparing for what she suspected would be a biased review process. She had meticulously documented every aspect of her training, memorized every regulation, and prepared responses to any possible accusation. When morning came, she reported to Commander Harrison's office with a heavy heart, but unwavering determination. The review committee consisted of 3 senior officers, including Harrison himself. Sarah noticed that Instructor Williams was present as an observer, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth as if he already knew the outcome. "Recruit Chen," began Colonel Peterson, the senior officer, "there have been concerns raised about the legitimacy of your performance during yesterday's exercises. Specifically, questions about whether you had prior knowledge of the scenarios or received unauthorized coaching." Sarah felt her temper flare but maintained military bearing. "Sir, I had no prior knowledge of any scenarios. My performance is based entirely on training I received from my grandfather, a Vietnam War Marine sniper, and standard military instruction." "Your grandfather's training," mused Peterson, flipping through her file. "Tell us about this training." For the next hour, Sarah detailed her childhood education in marksmanship, explaining techniques and principles that her grandfather had taught her. She described hours spent on makeshift ranges, learning to read wind patterns and calculate distances by eye, developing the patience and discipline required for precision shooting. Commander Harrison listened intently, occasionally asking technical questions that revealed his deep understanding of advanced marksmanship. Unlike the others, he seemed genuinely interested in her responses rather than looking for inconsistencies to exploit. "These techniques you describe," Harrison said after a long pause, "they're not taught in standard military training. They're advanced methods that most soldiers never learn." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied. "My grandfather believed that if I was going to learn to shoot, I should learn the right way from the beginning. He said bad habits were harder to break than good ones were to build." The committee deliberated for what felt like hours while Sarah waited outside the office. Through the closed door, she could hear heated discussions but couldn't make out specific words. Finally, she was called back inside to face their decision. After careful review, Colonel Peterson announced, "We find no evidence of impropriety in your performance. However, given the unusual nature of your training background, we're implementing additional oversight for your final evaluation." Sarah understood this was both a victory and a new obstacle. They couldn't disqualify her outright, but they were going to make her final test as difficult as possible. The additional oversight meant extra scrutiny designed to find fault with her performance. "The final evaluation for Black Talon certification will take place tomorrow," Peterson continued. "You'll be the last candidate to test, and the scenarios have been modified to reflect the highest possible difficulty standards." As Sarah left the commander's office, she realized they had essentially designed a test specifically for her, that would be harder than what any of the male candidates faced. It was a deliberate attempt to ensure her failure while maintaining the appearance of fairness. The other remaining candidates were sympathetic but couldn't offer much support. Martinez pulled her aside after the evening meal with genuine concern in his eyes. "Chen, I've been in the military for 12 years, and I've never seen anything like what they're putting you through," he said quietly. "They're setting you up to fail and everyone knows it." "Maybe," Sarah replied, "but I'm not giving up. My grandfather didn't survive 3 tours in Vietnam just so I could quit when things got difficult." That evening, she practiced with her personal rifle on the small range behind the barracks, running through every scenario she could imagine. Other soldiers gathered to watch, initially drawn by curiosity but staying because of the remarkable display of skill they witnessed. Private Jackson, who had completely changed his opinion of her abilities, served as her spotter during practice. "Your groupings are tighter than anything I've seen in competition shooting," he observed. "How do you stay so calm under pressure?" "My grandfather taught me that pressure is just another environmental factor," Sarah explained while adjusting her scope. "Like wind or temperature, you acknowledge it, account for it, and then ignore it." Word of her practice sessions began spreading throughout the base. Soldiers from other units started appearing at the fence line, watching the woman who had caused such controversy demonstrate skills that many of them could only dream of achieving. Commander Harrison appeared unexpectedly during one of these sessions. Standing silently at the back of the small crowd that had gathered, Sarah noticed his presence but continued her routine, placing shot after shot into the center of targets at increasingly difficult ranges. When she finished, Harrison approached without comment and examined her targets through binoculars. The precision was undeniable, groupings so tight they could be covered by a quarter at distances where most soldiers would be satisfied just hitting the target at all. "Remarkable," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "Absolutely remarkable." As Harrison walked away, Sarah wondered what he was thinking. Unlike the other officers, he seemed to evaluate her purely on performance, rather than preconceived notions about women in combat roles. She sensed that he might be the one person in the command structure who truly wanted to see her succeed, based on merit alone. The night before her final evaluation, Sarah sat alone in her bunk writing a letter to her grandfather. She wanted him to know how proud she was of the foundation he had given her, regardless of tomorrow's outcome. The techniques he had taught her, the values he had instilled, and the confidence he had built would serve her well beyond any military career. As she sealed the letter, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. Tomorrow she would give the best performance of her life. Win or lose, they would never be able to say she hadn't earned her place through skill, dedication, and unwavering determination. The final evaluation day arrived with an atmosphere of tension that seemed to electrify the entire base. Word had spread about the female recruit, who might become the first woman certified to use the military's most advanced sniper system. Soldiers found excuses to be near the advanced training facility, hoping to witness what many considered a historic moment. Sarah arrived at the facility to find an unusually large evaluation committee waiting for her. In addition to the regular instructors, several high-ranking officers she had never seen before were present, including a general whose uniform displayed ribbons from conflicts around the globe. Commander Harrison stood apart from the group, his expression unreadable as he reviewed what appeared to be a modified testing protocol. When he looked up and made eye contact with Sarah, she thought she detected something that might have been encouragement, though his face remained professionally neutral. "Recruit Chen," announced Colonel Peterson, "your final evaluation will consist of 5 progressive challenges designed to test every aspect of advanced marksmanship. You must achieve perfect or near-perfect scores on each stage to qualify for Black Talon certification. The first challenge was precision shooting at extreme range under ideal conditions." Sarah approached the firing line with confidence, knowing this was well within her capabilities. The target was positioned at 2,500 meters, further than she had ever shot during training. But her grandfather's lessons had prepared her for exactly this type of extension of known principles. She took her time calculating wind speed, air density, and the subtle effects of temperature on ballistics. The shot felt perfect as it left the rifle, and the spotter's confirmation came quickly. "Dead center. Perfect score." A murmur ran through the observing officers, but their expressions remained skeptical. Sarah knew they expected her to succeed at the easier challenges before failing at more complex ones. The second stage introduced environmental complications. Artificial fog machines created limited visibility conditions while fans generated variable wind patterns. The target was smaller and positioned at an angle that required precise calculations to account for the bullet's trajectory. Sarah adjusted her technique, relying on her grandfather's teachings about shooting in difficult conditions. She waited for the wind patterns to stabilize momentarily, accounted for the fog's effect on her sight picture, and squeezed the trigger with mechanical precision. Center ring. Excellent score, came the spotter's report. The third challenge was a timed precision exercise where she had to engage multiple targets in a specific sequence within a narrow time window. This tested not only accuracy but also the ability to transition quickly between targets while maintaining perfect shot placement. Sarah moved through the sequence with fluid efficiency. Each shot followed immediately by target acquisition for the next engagement. Her training had ingrained these movements until they became instinctive, requiring no conscious thought about mechanics or technique. All targets neutralized. Perfect time and accuracy, announced the timekeeper. By now, the observing officers were exchanging glances that revealed their surprise at her performance. Several were making notes on their clipboards with expressions of grudging respect. The fourth stage was the most psychologically challenging yet, a moving target scenario, where she had to lead a target that changed speed and direction unpredictably. This required split-second calculations and the ability to predict movement patterns under pressure. Sarah watched the target's movement for several cycles, identifying the subtle patterns within its apparent randomness. When she fired, the shot seemed to hang in the air for an eternity, before connecting with the moving target at precisely the right moment. Direct hit, textbook execution, called the spotter, and this time Sarah could hear admiration in his voice. The final challenge was unlike anything she had encountered before. The committee had designed a scenario that combined every difficult element: extreme range, environmental complications, time pressure, and a target that was partially concealed behind obstacles. As Sarah studied the challenge, she realized this was far more difficult than any test the male candidates had faced. They had indeed created a special examination designed to ensure her failure while maintaining the appearance of legitimate evaluation. Standards Commander Harrison approached her position as she prepared for the final shot. "Recruit Chen," he said quietly so only she could hear, "this scenario exceeds standard certification requirements. You should know that before you attempt it." Sarah looked at him with gratitude for his honesty, but her resolve never wavered. "Sir, I came here to prove I belong. If this is what it takes, then this is what I'll do." Harrison nodded slowly, perhaps seeing something in her eyes that reminded him of other warriors he had known. "Very well. Take your time and make it count." Sarah settled into her shooting position and began the most complex ballistic calculation of her life. She had to account for extreme range, crosswinds that varied at different distances, the target's partial concealment, and a time limit that allowed for only one carefully planned shot. The mathematics involved were staggering, requiring her to process multiple variables simultaneously while maintaining the calm focus necessary for precision shooting. Her grandfather's voice seemed to whisper in her ear, "The rifle is just a tool, sweetheart. Trust your training and let everything else fall away." As she prepared to fire, the entire facility fell silent. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary, regardless of their personal opinions about women in combat roles. Sarah controlled her breathing, felt the wind patterns on her skin, calculated the precise moment when all variables would align optimally, and squeezed the trigger with the accumulated skill of a lifetime's training. The sound of the rifle shot echoed across the range and seemed to hang in the air forever. Sarah remained in position, knowing that the slightest movement could affect the bullet's trajectory over such an extreme distance. Every person at the facility stood frozen, waiting for the spotter's call that would determine the outcome of months of controversy and preparation. The silence stretched on for what felt like minutes, but was probably only seconds. Through her scope, Sarah could see the target area but couldn't determine if her shot had connected. At 2,500 meters, through environmental complications and partial concealment, even a perfect shot might be difficult to spot immediately. Finally, the radio crackled to life with the spotter's report. "Stand by, checking target area." More silence. Sarah could feel sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool morning air. Behind her, she could hear the shuffling of feet and quiet whispers among the evaluation committee. The tension was so thick it seemed almost physical. "Target acquired," came the spotter's voice, now carrying a tone of disbelief. "Direct hit, center mass. Perfect shot under extreme conditions." A collective exhale seemed to escape from everyone present. Several of the observing officers stood in stunned silence, while others immediately began animated discussions about what they had just witnessed. Sarah finally rose from her shooting position, her legs slightly unsteady from the adrenaline and prolonged concentration. She had done it. Against all odds, despite the modified test designed to ensure her failure, she had achieved perfect scores on every challenge. Commander Harrison approached her with an expression that revealed nothing of his thoughts. For a moment, Sarah feared he might find some technical violation or procedural error that would invalidate her performance. "Recruit Chen," he said in a voice that carried across the entire facility. "That was the most impressive display of marksmanship I have witnessed in 25 years of military service." The words hit Sarah like a physical impact. Coming from a man of Harrison's reputation and experience, this was praise beyond anything she had dared hope for. But she maintained military bearing, unsure of what would happen next. Colonel Peterson stepped forward with his clipboard, his face showing the internal struggle between personal bias and undeniable evidence. "Recruit Chen, your scores on all 5 challenges exceed the minimum requirements for Black Talon certification." Sarah felt her heart pounding, but she waited for the inevitable however or but that would introduce some new obstacle or disqualification. Instead, Peterson continued, "Based purely on demonstrated performance, you have earned the right to be certified on the Black Talon system." The admission seemed to cost him considerable effort, but Sarah recognized that he was being forced to acknowledge what everyone present had witnessed. Her performance had been so exceptional that even the most biased evaluators couldn't deny her qualification. But then came the moment that would define everything. Peterson's next words revealed the final barrier she would face. However, given the unprecedented nature of this situation, the decision regarding actual certification must be made at higher levels. "Your scores will be forwarded to command for final review." Sarah understood immediately what this meant. They were going to push the decision up the chain of command, hoping that someone at a higher level would find a way to deny her certification for reasons that had nothing to do with demonstrated competence. Commander Harrison stepped forward, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of absolute authority. "Colonel Peterson, with respect, this recruit has met and exceeded every standard we've established. Her performance today was nothing short of extraordinary." He paused, looking directly at Sarah. "If we start second-guessing our own evaluation standards after they've been clearly met, we undermine the integrity of this entire program." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone present understood that Harrison was making a stand, using his considerable reputation and influence to support Sarah's qualification based purely on merit. Furthermore, Harrison continued, "I'm prepared to personally recommend Recruit Chen for immediate certification and assignment to active duty with advanced weapons systems." Sarah felt tears threatening to form in her eyes but fought them back. This was not the time to show emotional weakness, even tears of gratitude and relief. The general, who had been observing silently throughout the evaluation, finally spoke. "Commander Harrison, are you prepared to stake your reputation on this recommendation?" "Sir, I've staked my reputation on less qualified personnel before," Harrison replied without hesitation. "This soldier has earned her place through demonstrated competence. That's how the military is supposed to work." The general nodded slowly, then addressed Sarah directly. "Recruit Chen, step forward." Sarah approached, unsure of what to expect but prepared for anything. "Your performance today was remarkable," the general said. "You've not only met our standards but exceeded them under conditions that were frankly designed to be unfair. That takes character as well as skill." He turned to address the assembled committee. "Effective immediately, Recruit Chen is certified for the Black Talon system and will be transferred to active duty status with full qualification credentials." The words seemed to echo in Sarah's mind as their meaning sank in. She had done it. Despite every obstacle, every attempt to undermine her success, every moment of doubt and frustration, she had achieved her goal through sheer determination and skill. Commander Harrison approached her one final time, extending his hand in congratulations. As they shook hands, he said quietly, "Your grandfather would be proud. You've honored his training and proved that excellence knows no gender." Later that evening, Sarah called her grandfather to share the news. His joy was audible through the phone line as she described the day's events and the moment when Harrison had stood up for her qualification. "They scoffed at your request for a rifle," he said, his voice filled with pride and emotion. Then the commander quietly said, "Give her the black Talon, sweetheart. You've just proven that skill and determination can overcome any prejudice." Sarah smiled, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of her accomplishment. She had become the first woman certified to use the military's most advanced sniper system, not through favoritism or lowered standards, but by exceeding every challenge placed before her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and responsibilities, but tonight she could rest knowing that she had earned her place among the military's elite through merit alone. The black Talon rifle would be in the hands of someone who had proven worthy of its capabilities, and that was exactly how it should be.